We didn't have much. Our first set of furniture in our coffee shop, my dad took from our house. Like the couch and the table that customers were sitting on were from our house. People asked us to open a second store because it was a little too far from the house. Finally, we listened, we did it. And then we did that. Third store, fourth store, fifth store. It was very organic. We didn't raise money until we opened 13 when we had 13 stores. We were doing 15, $20 million in revenue at that point,
Yeah.
bootstrapped. We didn't need
Wow.
money. So we were just, we could have kept going, but we were like, you know what? We feel really confident and we want to learn how to do this right at a bigger scale, but do it with quality.
Static selector.
Hustle, grind, hustle. See them dollar signs, hustle, grind, assassin state of mind, hustle, grind. See them dollar signs, assassin state of mind, assassin state of mind, hustle, grind. See them dollar signs way above the bottom line.
What is going on, everybody? Happy Friday. It's your host, Justin Vandehay, here at the Assassins Podcast, where every week we have founders on the show talking about their journeys, grinding to get their companies from 0 to 1. Speaking of grinds, specific grinds, we've got a really special guest on this week. He's a consumer investor, but he's an entrepreneur and co-founder of one of the most successful coffee brands in the business, of Philz Coffee, aka we're going to call him the caffeinated assassin. Jacob Jaber, welcome to the Assassins Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Yeah, man. Excited for this episode because I'm a huge lover of the Philz brand, the Philz product. So to kick it off, I think would love to start with the founder's journey. If you wanted to share a little bit about your background and really like the story behind founding Philz.
Yeah. So both my parents are from the Middle East and, they didn't have much when they came to the States. They came to the States in their mid-teens and my dad opened up a little bodega. When he was 15, he came to the States. When he was 21, he saved up enough money to open up a little corner store in the Mission District in San Francisco on 24th and Folsom. It was great because he loved people. He was really good with people. He wasn't necessarily passionate about the products he was selling, but he always loved coffee and community and hospitality. So that was always in the back of his mind. I've been in the business since I was 9 years old, standing on top of milk crates, ringing people up at the register. My dad put me to work. So I learned a ton. I learned how to talk and deal and connect with different people. I learned how to count change back to customers. We didn't have any fancy POS systems. We had to just use our head for the most part, but I learned how to stock inventory. So I learned the rhythm of being in the business at a really young age. And as I was growing up, I learned I didn't really love school and I didn't do very well. But I felt like I was forced to learn stuff I wasn't interested in from people who weren't that interesting. So I left school at around the age of 17 and went and worked full time with my dad at the store. And at that point, it was 50% the birth of coffee, the coffee shop, and 50% still a bodega store. So it was a very organic transition and it didn't start out very successfully. We had to work our tails off. We worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. We didn't know a lot, but we knew a few things. And the few things were obsessing over the product and making it personalized for each customer and obsessing over hospitality, making, we used to use this term grandma's house hospitality. We really want people to feel welcome, comfortable so that they can come back, tell a friend, feel at home. And that's what we did. And it took many years for us to start getting more and more customers. And our second store it was, I think, 6 years, 7 years after our first store opened that we finally opened our second. And then from there, we kept growing, kept going one at a time, lots of mistakes, lots of wins too. But now we're at about 75 stores across the country and there's a lot in there. So I'm happy to dive into the
Yeah,
detail, but lots of learnings.
I know. I feel like everybody in tech circles familiar with the Philz brand. I frequented the spot on Berry Street when I lived at the Avalon Apartments. I think I mentioned that before we got on the show. And so everybody sees it now and they're like, oh man, this was like just overnight success. But I think what you're hitting on is it was years of hard work to build the relationships, understand the business, which I think is something that oftentimes just gets super overlooked, and especially in your game and your business. I'd be curious to build on that a little bit. And I mentioned Phil's obviously has an incredible product, and it's almost like you hit that inflection point where you all have like a cult following at times. Or I remember being that like, oh, we got to get Phil's before we would get on the Caltrain. And it's one of the things I miss most about the Bay Area, moving the family to Portland. So I was curious to hear from you a little bit more about how you all harnessed that initial customer fandom, and what were the things that you did in the early days that really helped you build the flywheel around the Phil's brand to get it going.
It's a great question. To your point earlier, it's a grind. No pun intended. It definitely is difficult. I think we were lucky in that my dad and I were very good with people and hospitality. It felt really natural. And maybe that was because it was part of the culture growing up, but we knew how to make someone feel comfortable. Whenever a customer came in, we said, "Hey, how are you?" We welcomed every single customer that came in. We looked them at the eye and said, "Hey, how are you doing today? What can I get for you?" We were present with them. We really made them feel extra special. And when you go into a place, oh, you look at the menu and you place an order. We didn't do that. What we did is say, we had a menu behind us. We were like, "What do you normally like to drink?" "You know what? I'm going to make you something special." So we took a very personal approach to every customer experience. And I will tell you, we got to meet the customer by the end of it. "Oh, I'm Jacob. What's your name?" They'd come back. They'd tell a friend. We'd get to know their sometimes they have to drop their kids off at school. They bring them in the store. We'd figured out what their kids like for pastries. On their birthday, we'd surprise them. We'd sing happy birthday. We'd turn off the music in the cafe and the whole store would sing happy birthday. We took notes on facts about people and our customers. So there was depth and authenticity and sincerity and passion for customers and getting to know them and making them something special. We just kept doing that thousands of thousands and thousands of times over the years. And I tell you, that created a lot of love and
Yeah.
ambassadorship. And that's what we did. And then the biggest challenge to scaling is just, how do we find great people who are going to be motivated to do that on their own without us there?
Yeah. That's a perfect transition to this next question, because I remember I had a really distinct relationship with one of the coffee connoisseurs, one of the baristas at Phil's. It almost felt like they were like my barber, which was I just had this I was like, "Oh man, I hope Joe is working today," right? And could you maybe talk about the role of the barista a little bit and how you all thought about hire and thinking about culture fit? And then also I was also curious to dig a little bit more into there, because I had this special one. They called it the red haze. That was my off the menu
That's
order
a
was,
secret. Yeah.
yeah, it was the
Good for
red
you.
haze.
You're a true fan.
Dude,
That's good.
I always joked about this, my wife and I, because we walked this maybe isn't the most appropriate part of the podcast, but like when we would walk our puppy Ace, there was a dog run over by the Berry Street, and we always joke
Yep.
because like Phil's is fully leaded. So the idea was like, you got to finish that coffee, and thank God we live next to the Avalon, because we always joke like we got to hurry back to the bathroom because that Phil's is gonna that morning coffee is gonna kick in, and we got to be close to the source, man. But we had to have my daily red haze because the product was just too real and too dope. But in all seriousness, like the red haze was one example of off menu. How did you think about creative control as well? And like the baristas, like how much creative control did you give folks? How did you think about bringing them into the culture and then also testing and validating new product?
Yeah. The good news is that we figured out when you're in the coffee business, you're actually in the people's business. And okay, so what does that mean? That means that we got to do a great job with people. We got to hire very thoughtfully, carefully. We have to nourish the relationship, inspire them, train them, educate them, learn from them as well, make them feel like a human, treat them with kindness, but also have a really high bar for excellence. And that's what we did. And we took it very seriously. I was interviewing the first 500 baristas. At one point, my employees were like, "This is too much. You're getting too involved." I was like, "I don't care. This is important."
Yeah.
And I didn't do it because I needed to make the decision. I did it to set the cultural tone that this is absolutely important and it's always going to be important. So I will say that was the best thing we did in terms of being able to scale while maintaining your quality. And the good news is when you take your time and you hire the right, it's a lot less work. Great people make it easier for you. When you have an employee and if things get harder after you hire someone, either something's wrong with you or them. Probably
Yeah.
not, probably not working out. It
Yeah.
should be. And when you hire great people, all you really need to do is connect with them. Hey, how you doing? What's working? What's not working? Oh, I need some help with that's it. And you just give the less, the less rules you impose, the better. We always used to tell our people our policies are do the right thing for the customer. You decide, and when you tell someone, particularly someone, in a retail store who works there, you decide. You decide what the right thing is. It's magical because what happens all of a sudden, they have all the power. They have the responsibility. And more oftentimes than not, they're going to do the right thing. And as a matter of fact, they're going to surprise us with things that we never knew could be done. And we use that and we share that and we try to do more of that. So you are in any business, you're in the people's business, I think, but particularly for us, hospitality, coffee, we're not in the coffee business serving people. We're in the people's business serving coffee. So really knowing that and obsessing over it was absolutely critical. And from a menu standpoint, we can talk about it more, but there are over, I think, 30 million ways to enjoy a Philz because there's so much customization. So we can go into that because I have a lot of exciting drinks, a list of drinks that we can talk about.
What's your go-to? I know there's obviously the on-menu stuff, and I've sampled everything, but I want we maybe live on the pod, if what's like your maybe on-menu or off-menu recommendation from the founders?
On menu, on menu for hot, I like Tesora with honey and cream.
Yep.
It's delicious. And then for cold, I like the filtered soul cold brew, and I do that with sugar and oat milk. That's delicious. For a secret menu, I will say there's something called the cinnamon toast crunch.
Ooh.
It's just really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to eat a ton of that cereal growing up.
Yeah.
As bad as it is for you, but so good. Yeah. So I can't give you all the details, but you just go and you ask the barista for it and they should, most of them should know.
Very solid. That personalization comes through. I just think that's such a special, unique trait of the brand that just always stuck with me. And I just very fond memories of just, I don't know, just on a personal front too. They got to know my dog, right? They got to know my partner, and and they were some of the most formative years of my professional career and just living down in that area. And it was just like, it became a staple of that. And yeah, that connection piece is really critical and really cool to hear you talk about that. Speaking a little bit more about, not to dog on any of these other brands, but brands that are maybe not as connected. The coffee game is obviously, it's pretty competitive. You've got the Death Stars like Starbucks. I just realized Death Stars like Starbucks and Pete's. When you guys started Philz, were you thinking at all about, man, how big could this brand be? And did you have sort of these aspirations of saying, we're going to disrupt the coffee category when you all started out?
Not at all. We were just trying to make sure we woke up in the morning and we could get to work.
Yeah.
It was as simple as that. Like we were just focused on, we didn't have much. Our first set of furniture in our coffee shop, my dad took from our house. Like the couch and the table that customers were sitting on were from our house. So we had to be really resourceful and work under harsh constraints, but we always never complained and kept it simple. But no, honestly, I would say we loved what we were doing. And as we got more customers, more people asked us to open a second store because it was a little too far from the house. Finally, we listened, we did it. And then we did that. Third store, fourth store, fifth store. It was very organic. We didn't raise money until we opened 13 when we had 13 stores. We were doing $15, $20 million in revenue at that point, bootstrapped. Yeah. We didn't need money. So we were just, we could have kept going, but we were like, you know what? We feel really confident and we want to learn how to do this right at a bigger scale, but do it with quality. It was never about, I want to have 2,000 stores or 1,000 stores. I was like, it's like the way to think about this is one store, 1,000 times. Just do a good job. One store, one customer at a time, one cup at a time, and earn. So even though we have 75 stores today, it's just like, we got to earn the 76th store, the 77th store.
Yeah.
If we don't do a good job, we don't deserve to open up in another community. think that's the right mindset. Think big, but act small.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's such a good takeaway. And awesome transition actually into a follow-up question I had on expansion and scale, because I know Phil's also did some pretty cool distribution deals. I remember the first time I sat down on a Virgin America flight, I was like, "Oh my god, I can get my favorite product right at my seat." And I'd love to maybe, yeah, I know you also have there's a wholesale aspect of the business. I know that there's a subscription aspect of the business. So was just curious, as you've grown the company, how y'all have thought about distribution and expanding the brand and assessing those opportunities. I'd love to also hear the Virgin story too, because I know you mentioned that there's a pretty cool story behind that.
Yeah. I could start there and then we'll see where that takes us. But
Yeah.
my dad is perhaps the best salesman. He's amazing. But I don't even want to call him a salesman because he just loves people and
Yeah.
he's very passionate and he has the best heart. So he was flying one day on Virgin America and they lost his luggage. And a lot of people would get pissed if that happened.
Yeah.
Not him. So he makes friends with everybody. Like he'll have an hour conversation with anyone, and it's hard to go places with him because he just wants to talk to everyone. Anyways, so he went up to the counter where he lost his luggage and he met this lady and she was wonderful and sweet. And oh, I lost my luggage and this and that. And she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He said, what's your favorite coffee? And she was like, "Excuse me?" He's like, "Well, what do you like to drink?" "My name is Phil from Philz Coffee. I'm the owner of Philz Coffee." And she's like, "I think I've heard of that. I never tried it." And what he did is he got her information and sent her bags of coffee to try and invited her to the store. And she loved it. And then he said, "How can we get our coffee on Virgin America?" And she was like, "I don't know, but I'll go ask." So she asked
That's just
and then connected us to the procurement manager who happened to live near Berry Street
ah,
where you were. And
yeah.
I almost grew up in Berry Street because I was managing that store. So anyways, and then he was like, "Oh, I love Phil's." So
Amazing.
one thing led to
Yeah.
another and they invited us and they said, "Come on a plane. Let's test some coffee." We didn't have any infrastructure, but what did we say? We can make it work. We'll figure it out. So
Yeah.
that's how that happened
Love
because
that.
my dad lost his luggage. We didn't have a hit list or what do they call it? The leads. Here's all my leads.
Yep.
It was amazing. But I think what that taught me is that when you're a founder, you always have to be on and you always have to look at every problem as an opportunity.
Yeah. Honestly, just flip that, because I tell you, I've lost my bags a couple times, and I candidly, I don't have the mindset to be cutting business deals when my
Yes.
my shit is in. So the fact that he had that level of chill to be able to just keep a level head also and just assess the opportunity,
That's it.
that's pretty
Yeah.
special.
That's his
Yeah, that's pretty
magic.
special. Okay. That was really cool.
I forgot your first part of your question, but we can keep
Oh, it's all
going.
good. It
Sorry. I
was
don't know if
more
I
the boring stuff about, like, just distribution in general, but I think that story is pretty
Okay.
solid. Yeah, I know now, subtle transition, you've transitioned now into the chairman role at Phil's, and I know you've been starting to do some more investing and actually have created a really interesting holding company, and so I'd love if you'd share a little bit more about what you're jamming on now and what are the things
Yep.
that you're looking at from an investment standpoint.
Yeah, so I love entrepreneurship. I love investing. I love helping founders. And I learned this as I was running Phil's. I've been running Phil's for 20 years. So probably at year 10, 11, 12, I started doing some angel investing and just started falling in love with it. And I got so much help when I started because I didn't know what I was doing. So I love being able to give back and help others. So I thought it would be amazing to spend time. Of course, there's still Phil's, but in my other time, how can I help entrepreneurs and companies reach their full potential with what I know? How can I add value? So I created a holding company and there's three parts to it. It's really exciting because it gives the flexibility to put my energy where I want versus just one lane. So the first lane is investing, angel investing and advising. And I have about 20 companies in the portfolio today. And that's growing. That's great. And there's no mandate, oh, you have to invest in X amount of companies per year. I just invest in what I know and have high conviction on. If that's 10 companies in one year, great. If it's two, great. That's one. Two, buying companies. There are a lot of wonderful businesses that could use some help and could be shared with a lot more people and have a lot of untapped potential. But these are really good brands and companies that maybe have been around. And these are companies that you ask the question, what's not going to change in 50 years? So people are still going to want a great deli sandwich. People are still going to want a great coffee. What's not going to change? So these wonderful businesses, buy them, make sure we respect them and grow them very carefully and thoughtfully in a profitable way and not sell them. The intent is not to buy and sell like
Yeah.
investors do. The intent is to buy great businesses from great people, work with them and help them grow to its fullest potential. So that's number two. The third one is an incubation studio where we're builders. I'm a builder. I can't help but I have so many ideas, right? If there's an idea that we really like, we turn it into a little project. If it gets traction, we turn it into a business. If it gets traction, we start putting more resources into it and grow it. So that's the approach is build, buy, and invest.
Awesome. That's killer. What I've been asking this question, I'm going to ask this of the caffeinated assassin. You can take that or leave that, for whatever it's worth. Okay, so what is one thing that you wish Jacob today would have told Jacob at age 19 as an entrepreneur? What's one takeaway or thing that you could bestow upon a younger Jacob fresh out of high school?
Focus. Focus is one. I think there are a couple of other things, which is starting working at a young age, I developed pretty good instincts. And sometimes whenever I didn't listen to my instincts or there was an itch in my gut about something, it was always right, but I still did it and it was wrong. One example is when you're a 21-year-old CEO building and scaling a company, hiring executives twice your age, it's a very interesting dynamic, particularly if there's not respect. So that was and I did not like confrontation. So it was really hard to work in those early 20s as a owner, a manager of the business with professionalized management who are a lot older when I knew they were not right. Like some of them was not right. So I waited way too long to let them go. I should have listened to. So pay very close attention to your gut. And if
Yeah.
there's an itch, think about that. Pause. The second thing I would say is as we raised money, we got dumber. We got smarter in some ways and dumber in other ways. Because sometimes when you're 20 points up in a game, it's easy to lose the competitive juice.
Yeah.
When you're 20 points down, you're fighting. So it's just like COVID. What did COVID do for all of us? It was an urgent crisis. We all had to react accordingly and focus on the most important thing. And that was the beauty of it is it forces you to focus. So sometimes when you have too many resources, you lose the juice. So I think when we raised money, my dad and I used to hammer nails. The first few stores we built on our own, like we would actually do some of the work to keep the costs down. But then you get money, you hire people, these fancy titles, you have employees negotiating on your behalf, and it's easier. It's harder to keep that mindset, that resourceful mindset. So I would say, one, trust your instincts. Two, don't forget where you came from. Embrace constraints. Don't fight them.
Awesome. That's solid, man. That's a great place to wrap. I wanted to give you also some space just to see. I know obviously you've got the holding company you talked about. Is there anything else that you wanted to plug as we wrap?
No, you could reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn at Jacob Jaber, and I'm mostly focused on consumer stuff, but that can be consumer tech. It's basically products and services that are better and experiences that are better that power people. So it could even be workforce management software. It could be a food and beverage business. It could be so things that I understand. So if there's any way I could be helpful to people, let me know. And I'm curious if I may ask you if that's all right. Same question that you just asked me. What would you tell your earlier self?
Yeah. It really echoes actually what you said earlier in the podcast. The people that you put around you define the journey. And I think it's the quality of just having folks on board with a founder's mentality that embrace that and really set the tone and are interested in building a culture. I found that was so important because you go through some shit when you're building something, and you need people that are really down for the cause, that really believe in the thing that you're trying to do, and you make it feel like their own, but like they were part of something bigger. And that would be the thing, is don't settle. Always aspire to get the best people for the role. That's one thing that I've really been thinking a lot about. And I think we were fortunate that we had some really great people around the table. And honestly, that was luck. There was a lot of luck because we were pretty inexperienced, but that was my big takeaway from the first go around. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome said.
Yeah. Anyway, I appreciate you, man. I know you got a lot going on, so thanks again for coming on. I think we gotta at some point we're gonna have you back on. Whether I'm pitching this idea of, I don't know if it's like Jacob's Corner or what, but there's like a coffee for closer segment. We got to spitball on that. There's like some segment where we have you back on because you're phenomenal, and I absolutely love what you've built, and so excited to see what you start working on next.
I would love that. I'm down. I'm game to chat anytime about that. You're awesome.
Awesome, dude. All right, man. We'll be in touch, and all the best to you and the fam.
Thanks so much.